Hi everyone. Today I want to do a video tutorial on the alpha layers just so that you have this and can go back and look at this if you prefer to watch videos. So we're starting off with this series of images, the tiger images and then the paint images. So I'm going to do Command I to import, and I'm going to go to my tiger folder and oh shoot, haven't imported them yet. Give me one moment. Let's see. Pause. Okay, I have the files now, and so I'm going to import them. And something you can do is you can decide to import as a JPEG sequence, which I will do. And let's see if it reads one. We want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and it's kind of interrupted with these color frames, but let's see if it reads it correctly. So importer JPEG sequence, we have that checked. I'm going to hit OK, and it looks like it was brought in correctly. That's great. So I'm going to say new comp. Let's do 1920 by 1080. And we'll say frame rate. Let's do 24. And let's make 5 seconds. And I'll call this tiger sequence, SEQU. Now, just a reminder, if you did not know how I created a new composition, you can do Command N, that makes a new composition. Command K brings up the composition settings for the composition that we're currently in. So if you, whatever you have selected down here, and this button right down here, that makes a new composition as well. So in my tiger sequence, I want to drag in my image sequence, and these are photos that I took on my phone, so we know that it is needs to maybe be scaled and rotated. So something to keep in mind that is important. Whenever we're working with image sequences, we need to come in here and we need to say interpret footage, main, and this is where the image sequence frames per second are read. So you could tell that like this is going pretty fast, looks way faster than 12 for sure, and probably faster than 24, and that's because it is. So we come back over here, we right click, we say interpret footage, main, and this is where we can set. So I'll say 12, and look at how that doubled the length of my material. Okay, so you can see how that's different now. So something that I don't really like about this is the fact that like, if I come in here and I want to change an individual position, I'm gonna have to, like, if I want this to be more in line, like the back of the tiger maybe should be closer there. It really jumps there. So maybe if I wanted that to be a little bit different, I would have to like make a keyframe here, and then I would have to come here and drop that down. And so I would just have to keep adjusting that. And that's frustrating because I'm having to make all these extra keyframes that I don't really want to make. So I'm going to show you a different way to import. So it's nice to know how to do this, and it's really nice if you are working with image sequences to know how to interpret your footage. And an image sequence would work a lot better if I was photographing or scanning my paper instead of taking photographs. If I was scanning it and I was getting the exact same registry every single time, then it would hit correctly in the correct area, the correct areas. But it's not working very well as is because my hand is moving around and all that. So I'm going to import the tiger footage again. But this time, instead of importing as a JPEG sequence, I'm just going to import each individual file. Open. And I want to keep my files organized, so I'm going to make a folder and say tiger, and I'll drag them in here. So now what I can do instead is I'm going to drag and drop all of my files down here. I can do the exact same thing by having them all selected. I can hit S on the keyboard. That's going to bring up scale. And I can scale that down. I can now hit R on the keyboard and rotate that around. Now, this is, of course, down underneath. I'll just turn that off for now. We can only see the top layer. If we turn that layer off, then we get to see the bottom layer. And that is how we would move through and see our different layers. But what I want to do, this is a really wonderful trick. I'm going to select all of my layers. I'm going to come over here. When I get these double arrows pointing in opposite directions, I'll click, drag all the way back, make sure that it goes all the way back to 1 frame. And I just remembered that I'm in 24 frames a second in this composition. So I'm going to actually drag it to the 2 frame marker because I want to work in doubles, because I want this to look as if it's 12 frames a second. So I'll keep it on doubles. So I've dragged them all back. This whole stack is right here. Now I'll just take this, shift select again in the order that I want them to sequence. And I will right click or control click, keyframe assistant, sequence layers. Hit OK. And now we have an automatic stair step for our layers. So that's great. So it looks like it's running backwards. So actually, I'm going to Command Z. And this time, instead of selecting from 1 to 12, I must have labeled them backwards. So I'm going to select 12 to 1. And I'll do the same thing. Keyframe assistant sequence layers. Okay. Let's bring our work area over here. I can move my playhead wherever I want. And then I can hit N, the letter N, and that will bring the work area ending to where my playhead is. And the beginning, the letter is B. Okay, so now that looks correct. It looks like it's actually running in sequence. Are all my numbers in the right order? Let's double check. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 12. Oh, it looks a little bit off. Maybe those are backwards. That looks better. So apparently I have 11 and 12 incorrectly labeled here. All right, so we are one step closer to achieving what we want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pre-comp this because I think that it will be easier to work with. Actually, no, next step I'm going to do. So why I wanted to switch to individual frames versus the image sequence is now I can come back in here and I can make better adjustments on the fly much quicker. So I'm going to make a new shape layer. And I'm going to make a rectangle. I can do that by double clicking on the rectangle shape up here. Big rectangle. Now I'm going to go into the contents. And I just want to make a single line. And I'm going to say, I guess, that this is where I want the back of the tiger to always kind of like be hitting that line. So I'll come here and I can hit P on my keyboard, or I can open up the tab right here and I can bring that down. So I'm just relining up all of my tiger because I didn't have proper registration for my paper. So it's best to like shoot on a tripod, and it's also best to create like a registration for where you want your paper to line up. So, of course, the more frames that you have, the more tedious this will be. It's too low. That's about it. So let's see. So that feels like it's better. The tiger is in a more consistent space, and we can see that the tops and the bottoms of the frame are kind of moving up, moving up and down, which is kind of how we know that our registration is off. So now I'm going to just turn off that line. I don't need it anymore. And now what I want to do is I want to make a pre-comp. So I will shift select all of these, come down to my 12th frame, and I will say pre-compose. I right click, pre-compose, and I'll call this tiger frames. And I'm over here to avoid some confusion. I have tiger frames and tiger sequence. I'm going to come back here. So this is tiger sequence, what I'm working in, and I kind of condensed what I had and put it into a file called tiger frames. I'm going to just rename tiger sequence. I can hit return, and that will bring that to write some new text in. I'll just say tiger, that's all, because this is kind of like our main comp that we'll be working in. I'm going to delete my sequence that I had done there. Okay, so next step that we want to do is we want to make this just a a better mask for the computer to read, which we need it in stronger black and white. So I'm going to come to my effects and presets, and I'll type in black and white, I believe should do it. Can drop that on. And now I can also come to levels or curves. Levels. I can crush the black and the white values, so it's a lot stronger contrast. So we do have some like really strong black and white values now. We've reduced all of the midtones, but what I want to do, I still need to like get rid of the edge that's around the paper. So I can do that by creating a mask, and should be fairly easy. I'm going to right click, mask, new mask. And now I have this box that was just added. If I come down into Tiger frames, I've also added the mask. So if I grab my pen tool, I can come up here. And I can get rid of all that. Let's see. So main thing you want to make sure that you're doing when you are creating your mask is, of course, you don't want to cut off any portion of the animation. Looks like right here, we need to go in a little bit more. And if you need to, you can actually animate the mask as well by turning on the keyframe. So if I had that there and then for some reason needed to like have this here, you can see that it works, but I don't need that. So let's turn that back off. All right, so now let's make the color of our tiger. So I'm going to make the tiger green. I'm going to do Command I, and I'm going to bring in my green swatches. And because I don't really need to reorganize my swatches, like it doesn't really matter if they're aligned, because this is more of a texture. I'm just going to import these as a JPEG sequence. And remember, I can come up here and I can say interpret footage, main, and I want to change this to, let's just even go lower to like 8 frames a second, or let's just do 10, that will be good. Now I'll drop this down underneath. And it's behind my tiger. You can see how it's interacting. And I'm gonna scale it up just a little to make sure that this is clear. So now what I want to do is I want to tell the computer, okay, within this area that I have right here, I want to fill in the black area, and I want the white area to just be transparent. I want to fill the black area with the green. So what I can do here is I can use something called a lumimat, which will read the difference between the black and white values, and that's why we were creating this like strong contrast. So I can come over here where it says track matte, And if you don't have that, it's going to be right down here in this lower left corner, this tiny little box right here. So make sure that that's turned on. Now I'm going to say track matte. I want the green to fill the black. So what that is, if I want the black area to be filled, I'm going to use a Luma inverted matte, which is actually the opposite of kind of what we went over in class. But you can have the regular or inverted. So we'll be using inverted, and that fills it in. But you can see how, okay, well, still I have this issue of the green is kind of like on the outside of the black right now, and that's because if I turn this back on, our matte only goes out this far, and we would need it to cover up these edges. So we could try and expand this far, but you can see that will create a problem right here. So we can kind of see a little bit of the green coming up in this position right here, because it's like not quite solid white, right? So in all honesty, in order to deal with this again, I would say that what we could do is we could turn off the matte first of all. And now I'm going to create a solid white background. So I can come up here to layer, new, solid. I'm going to make a white background. And I can drag this underneath the tiger frame. Okay, and so this wasn't even like quite pure white yet. Maybe we can get that to be better. Tiger frame, you can come up here to effect controls, and I'm going to say contrast, brightness contrast. Now let's bump up the brightness. Yeah, there we go. So that's great. Now I want to pre-compose my tiger frame and my solid. And I'll call this tiger matte. And now I no longer have that weird edge that I have to deal with. It's all just on this one layer. If I jump inside, then we see like, okay, weird layer, weird edge. But now back in my tiger layer, I just have my paint underneath and my tiger matte. So I can come back to here and I can say Luma matte, tiger matte. And I meant to do inverted, and there we go. And I can also import my blue swatches. So I'll do the same thing, PNG sequence, that looks great. I'll drag this underneath. And this isn't being affected by anything. But we do know, there's no alpha or anything. So the alpha is, it's like whatever is on top of it, basically. These two are sort of like partners now. And whatever underneath is not affected by it. but I do want to change the footage. Speed 12 or 10 to match. So not bad. Definitely feel like these colors aren't quite matching. So let's go to effects and presets. Let's say hue saturation. Let's drop this on the green swatch that I have, and I want to change this to maybe like a bright yellow. That's fun. All right, so the last thing to keep in mind when we're working with the alpha layers. So if I start to move this around, why does that, I'm sorry, when we're working with the Luma layers, I start to move this around, why does this like get cut off? Well, because our green layer only goes so far, remember? So I can do some interesting stuff, but only so much because of this limited size. So I could scale that up a little bit if I wanted to. I could scale this and I could move this around more, move that back and forth. But what I want to have the option of is moving this tiger more freely. So what I'm going to do once again is I could do this one of two ways. I could pre-comp these together again, or I could parent my paint layer that I have. I could parent it to my tiger layer, and I can do parenting by dragging this little pick whip of my paint layer up to my tiger layer. And now if I move my tiger layer at all, my paint layer is going to move with it. And so before, when I didn't have that, I'm going to turn this off now. So none. Before, when I didn't have that, you can see what's happening. Like the paint does not move with my tiger. When I parent my paint to my tiger, sorry, I meant to move it. Then I can move that around. So here you can see I could take my tiger, have it start here. I'm going to have the position there. And then after 1 second, so this is going to be real fast, it moves to the other side. So something that I would do prior to setting some of this up, I'd actually maybe like come back inside of Tiger. I could double click and go inside of Tiger Map, and Tiger Frames, when it goes to here, I could make this a lot longer. So I know that's the last frame. I'm going to drag this right here to the end of my playhead. And now I'm going to duplicate a number of times. And I'm going to shift, select, keyframe assistant, sequence layers. Now I have a longer loop. And if I go back to my tiger now, I could drag this out to like say a full 5 seconds almost. Okay, and so now another problem, but we can solve it pretty easily, is that my footage that I have doesn't last long enough for the fill. I need this footage to like last longer now as well. And so I think actually we can go back into this footage again, interpret footage, main, and I can say, loop however many times. So let's say like loop 10 times. So now this is a lot longer. And let's also make the blue footage loop longer. Interpret footage, man. Make that go slow. So I hope that this is helpful, and let me know if you have problems.